Population of the pole, video 2. This is just covering a few miscellaneous items. The first thing I'd like to mention is the vertical offset, which we covered in the first video. I have mine defaulted to 1.5 meters in the settings. I didn't mention that you can change this for an individual pole or a set of poles, that you may have obstructions at that offset point. For example, you might have some shrubbery interfering with it, and then you can't see that mark when you go to shoot your attachment heights with your tripod. Or you may have a huge snowbank. I've commonly had that in the winter, and you have to get up higher to the, say, the 2 meter mark. I use a lightning rod and I push it down to the ground level and then mark off a position. And so you could change that to whatever value you want and not worry, because it will return to your defaulted value at the next pole that you place. I'd also like to point out that you should always use the vertical offset or never use it, per project anyway, because you want to establish a habit. It is so easy to forget if you're going back and forth. And if you forget, you're going to have all the measurements for that pole off, and it will not be good in the downstream process. So get into the habit of always doing it or never doing it. The only time I don't do it is I might set it, my vertical offset default, to 0 or just turn it off if I'm in a city and the entire project, the poles are at the street or coming out of the sidewalk, because you can clearly see that point where the base of the pole hits the grade level. And that would be the only instance. Now, I'd also like to point out that in my case here, it's in metric. Well, you may be, say, American, or where they use imperial. And in that case, you can switch, go to the settings tab, go to general. You can switch your unit type to imperial, feet decimal, yard decimal, or architectural units. And you don't have to worry about the rest of the values in the app that you've already placed, because they're all saved in meter format. They just display in whatever you choose. The next thing I'd like to point out is, if you look at the imagery pane, you see the street. Now, if you hold that imagery pane for a second with your finger, this little menu pops up and you can adjust the road alignment. And the reason you might want to do that, let's just set it back here, fetch map data, is if when you place the pole, the program, when it fetched the data, if it aligned the road incorrectly, which it doesn't often do, but when it does, you want to align that correctly. The times where you find it doesn't align it correctly is usually near an intersection, because it's either choosing the other intersecting road, which you don't want. You want it to be the road that you're permitting the poles for, or it's so close to the intersection that it gets it on an angle, because it compromises between the two roads. And in that case, you want to align it, because if you're doing the full profiling and you're sending out for processing, a lot of the products that it outputs aligns everything, including the views of the pole, to its relation to the road. So you don't want that all messed up. Plus, it makes your job easier if you're doing that full profiling, because it aligns your attachments to the road to the most logical position based on the road. So it'll save you some time. The other thing I'd like to point out here on this first page is right here where it says pole. You can change that to any of these type of elements. If, for example, your pole, this is not a full survey pole and it's just a reference pole. See, we exit out of there and it changes it to just a reference adjacent pole. You could also change that to a tie pole between projects if your project grows to be too many poles. The maximum amount of poles you can have in a project is 124, because of the CAD outputs will not allow you to do more than 250 odd tab views, and you need a cover page, so 124 is the max. The final thing I'd like to show you in this video, this miscellaneous video, is the last tab, the topo page. Now, this will change in the future. The only thing I usually use this page for, or this tab for, are the top two elements. The vertical offset to the common grade. Let's say the pole is in a ditch and it's the base of the pole hits the ground at a lower altitude than the common grade. You'll want to reference that. Usually that's required, and you can enter any value you want, -2.1, let's say, if it's a deeper ditch. And then you can indicate if where the common grade, what it actually is, whether it's a curve or a median or a road. It's usually a road. And that can be very useful, especially if you're calculating span clearances and the span that you're using next crosses a street. The rest of the values on this page are if you're required to get sidewalk offsets or fence offsets, things like that. And in the future, this will be more of a drawing page where you can also place street furniture such as fire hydrants or shrubs, bushes, trees, and it will be very useful there, but it isn't quite developed yet. And that's everything I'd like to cover in this video. Thanks for giving me your attention.